I started producing the content insofar as a list of things that you need to know to make the best use of AI. And there was such a list of things that people need to know before they start that what I thought I'd do today, because I want to do this from the perspective of using it to write. What we'll do is we'll create an article, and the article will have a background, all of the background information about how you can use AI effectively and safely, and we will produce that as an article today. So you'll get an insight into writing with an AI like ChatGPT, and I'll use various different AIs as we move on through the series, because they've all got different skills and personalities and functionality, although it all tends to be converging. Anyway, so here we are. This is the ChatGPT interface. Now you can get free access to this. Not all functionality is available for the free version. So on the left hand side, let's say you were to create an account, a free account with ChatGPT, you would get access to these things up here, which are known as projects. And so you can create a project, and let's do that. Let's create a new project, and we'll call this project Introduction to Using AI. October 2025, because of course it all will have changed in another month. And we'll just create that project. And all that a project is a place to put files that you and the AI can access. So the very first thing I'm going to do is try to move away from calling it an AI and start to call it a chatbot, right? Because AI is all a little bit frightening. Artificial intelligence, it's all they're going to come take our jobs away and kill us. And whereas actually what we use are essentially chatbots. It's all about language. All of the things that it appears to understand doesn't actually understand anything. What it has is language. So it embeds language in its system, just the same way that human beings do. As a matter of fact, the structure of a chatbot like ChatGPT, it mimics the way that the human brain works. It's called a neural network. Okay, so the very first thing we want to know is, to be able to do this, is what are the limitations and constraints on what we're doing. And if you're using a chatbot and it's free, the first limitation is the amount of tokens that you can use. Now, a token isn't quite a word, but it may as well be. Yeah. So it's not exact. I think it's sort of 3/4 of an English language word is a token. And so you have a limited number of tokens. When you buy a paid version of this, you also have a limited number of tokens. So what I'm going to do is tell the chatbot what we're doing. We are writing an article, and it's an intro using LLMs in 2025. One is limitations, constraints. Two is potential issues. We need to get those out of the way. And number three is useful functionality. Just seeing a squirrel digging into a rose pot. And what I'm going to do is tell it how I want it to respond. And I'll say I don't want huge tomes. Right, huge tomes of response. I want a short conversation from where we will construct the article. Okay, so to start, explain about tokens simply. There we go. So that this is the writer's block killer. If they took away everything else from AI and you could only have one piece of functionality, this is what it would be. It would be the ability to, okay, we're going to get started on writing something. Okay, so it's telling us that a token is part of a word. It's gone into a little bit too much detail about that, but there are limits. And so it says that there's 128,000 tokens in the context window. I'll explain what that is in a minute. And there's also, you've got a limited number of tokens. Those are two completely different things. So the best way to look at context is that it's the memory. Each token, every time that I type a word here, a token is being levied against my account. And so if I produce enough tokens, I'll run out of the paid account and then it will push me onto a free account. And we'll come to the limitations of that later. So a quick paragraph explaining that tokens affect user access to the LLM, and we can then explain context. So it should now generate a quick paragraph. Okay, so there we go. So now what we've got down here is a copy button. So if we click on that, what I'll do is I'll drag that out and I'll just put it in a note. And then we have our first paragraph. Okay. It wants to work with notes. I'm not particularly keen on that. I like to manage input and output to the chatbot myself. There are scenarios where I might actually want that. Generally, I prefer to give it access to Google Drive or something like that rather than my apps. Okay, so we know that essentially it's a kind of way of counting the words. and there's a limit on the number that you can use. And that is published by each chatbot business. Okay, now simply explain context. With regards to spelling, when you're having a conversation like this, if you think that the spelling mistakes that you type in might change the context, or you don't think you've explained yourself particularly well, and you've got some typos in there, then it's best to go in and fix the typos. But 9 times out of 10 for something like this, I put in simply explain and I left the L out, context, it will read that just like a human being would and put the word in context and realize that I meant explain, and then it will give me this same output. So you take a look at the sentence you've typed, and if you think it might be difficult to comprehend, you can decide whether you want to go back and do a spell check, unless you're one of these people that never make spelling mistakes. Right, so there we go. It's a little bit too verbose. Okay. So let me add that to my notes. So we've got a paragraph on tokens, and we've got a paragraph on context, which is memory, and that's made up of tokens. So you can use the concept of words and tokens interchangeably. You've got a number of words at input, and you've got a number of words at output, and the LLM will charge you dependent on that number of words that you use when you're putting in what's known as a prompt. This conversation that I'm having is what's known as a series of prompts, and what you're doing is you're prompting the chatbot in a conversation. Okay, so explain LLM in a short paragraph. Simpler. Now, there are a lot of ways of looking at the personality. There we go. What I'll do is I'll record this. There are a lot of ways at looking at the personality of chatbots. And really, there's 2 scales in personality that matter. One is verbosity, which you're seeing here. And the other is it seems to be that the opposite to sycophancy is laziness. So what a sycophant is somebody that always agrees with someone all the time and praises them. That's a sycophant. And at the other end is laziness. And I've seen a number of these chatbots move from sycophancy to laziness. And laziness means you'll ask it to do something, and it does a pretty good job of ignoring what you really want. And if the thing that you want it to do involves it generating a lot of tokens, it is actually quite resistant to doing that. So laziness is a very real thing, and sycophancy. Right now, Claude, which is another of the AIs, of the chatbots that I'll be telling you about, it's sorry, I haven't been looking at the messages. Yeah, Claude is very sycophantic at the moment. So if you suggest something, it says excellent, fantastic idea, which is all very wonderful. But let's have a look. So Carol says, yeah, yeah. So it has they have access to previous conversations. So the context of a conversation is X number of tokens. It said here it's like 128,000 tokens. Let's say that's 100,000 words, something like that. It will have access to the other conversations, very probably just by the titles, but maybe also with keywords. But it won't necessarily look there in every case, because that would fill its current context up. For example, if you had lots and lots and lots of conversations, when you open it up, its memory is full of all the old conversations, so it has a limited access to them. But there may be keywords, so I suspect it will use keywords. I'll have to look into this, and it will have access to the titles of the chats, so it's able to look back at previous conversations. Yeah, yeah. Copilot apparently is sycophantic. That's interesting, because ChatGPT and Copilot are largely the same thing, but I think that Microsoft makes changes to it, and Kel's worried that they've got personalities. Well, what is a personality? I mean, I've met people who have quite big personalities, but when you actually dig, it's all been created. It's a persona. That is a class for another day, is to actually look at the AI personalities. It's on the list of classes that we'll be doing. These are just the things that you will have to deal with in a conversation with a chatbot. So now, one of the things that you can do, let's say, right now it looks like ChatGPT is going through a very verbose mode. You can put in what's known as custom instructions. Custom instructions allow you to inform the bot of how you like it to respond. So we've got that as well, which is an explanation of LLMs. Not sure if that's actually nope. There we go. That's better. So we've captured that. So we've now got 3 paragraphs. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT refers to custom instructions as custom instructions. So let's find out. Tell me about custom instructions for LLMs and what I can add to them. Okay, so what it's saying is it's how you personalize all of the responses from the LLM. And you might put in things, a bit about me. So here you go, it knows about me. So it said a short description of who you are or what you do. For example, I teach meditation and write educational articles. So there you go. And what kind of responses do you prefer? And I do prefer concise and practical responses. And it's probably reading these from my current custom instructions. I can't remember what I put in ChatGPT. And it's saying your writing style. So you can put a writing style in as well. I like to use, so the custom instructions, if you go to, this is on ChatGPT, every LLM is different, but generally speaking, anything that's sort of global that applies to, I'll come back to the icons in a second, anything that applies to the whole system. And if you put in custom instructions for a large language model, it applies to everything that it responds to. You click on your name and you go to settings, and then somewhere here is personalization, and it has, sorry Kel, it's got a number of personalities. These are a little bit on the silly side. We've got default personality, we've got cynic, robot, listener, and nerd. Let me just see if I'm not sure that you can actually see that because it's opened a separate dialogue. So let me change the sharing, if I can, without crashing the live stream, to be able to display the entire screen. Let's say I wonder, how do I change the sharing? I'll just have a look. Looks like I can stop sharing and then I can reshare the entire screen. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't do that. So stop sharing. There's my happy smiling face. And we come back and we go to entire screen. There it is. And we get the infinite recursive user interface effect, which is always fun. Right, and then, so now if I kind of blank myself out, and I click on settings. Right, can you see those? Can you see the settings dialog? I'll pop back. Yeah, I think you could. Let's move it over to here. Yes, you can see it. Good, good, good. Right, so there we go, settings. You see, go to settings, personalization. Oh, I've got two sets of settings open. That sounds interesting. There we go, personalization. And here you've got the personalities: default, cynic, robot, listener, and nerd. I mean, I want the default one. And these are largely the instructions that I put into this chatbot for language that I was using it for the mindfulness and meditation and resilience training. So I'm saying to it, use an explainer style of language, simple, clear, and minimal, nothing creative, no woo-woo, simplify and minimize it, right for adults with a reading age. It's ignoring a lot of these, by the way. I can tell you for sure it is not aligned with writing for adults of a reading age of 16. From time to time, because the chatbots are constantly being developed, the custom instructions that you apply to them at one point might not work at all at some point in the future. Don't use the word delve. That was a real pain in the neck. It would, please answer this question. And it would tell me about how it was going to delve into it. And at the bottom, you see stuff about me. It's all about Bromley mindfulness. And I'm a meditation and AI technology teacher. There you go. I've just added the AI bit because otherwise I thought it's going to be totally focused on teaching mindfulness. And so I would have a struggle to keep it on track because it's trying to be personalized. So there are the custom instructions, but it's ignoring a lot of them. It is simply not writing for a 16-year-old. I mean, if we go up here, the very first responses. There you go. I mean, this is quite dense. Tokens are the basic units that control how users access and interact with an LLM. Every message you send and every response the model generates consumes tokens, and the total number allowed defines how much you can do in one interaction. In simple terms, tokens are like, I mean, that's not, that is not simplified minimal language. So what I would have to do if I was going to continue, I don't actually use ChatGPT for writing at the moment, but I'm only using it because most people use it. If I wanted to use it for writing, I'd probably clear the custom instructions. Let's do that because they're actually being ignored. There we go. Where are we? Personalization, custom instructions. The line at the bottom, take a deep breath and work on this problem step by step, at one point was one of the few ways that you could, by adding that to every prompt, was one of the few ways that you could get it to stay on track. Because I've actually been using this software for a few years now. And I've changed my occupation. I'm now an online educator. There we go. And then there's lots of stuff in here about me. I'm going to delete all of that as well. Now, underneath this is a manage memory option. And what it has in here, this is what you'll probably be noticing when you your chatbot will probably be noticing is it's picked things up from previous conversations. and if it finds something that it thinks is useful to retain as a memory, it does so. And so that when you go back to memories, there you go. There's the saved memories. So what I'm going to do is it'll keep those memories. I'll have to go in and delete them one by one, which I will do because I want to clear it up. But you can also switch off it whether it refers to saved memories or not. And here's the on button. It says here that it lets ChatGPT reference recent conversations. So that's the memories there, basically. But that might also include maybe dipping into your last 3 or 4 conversations, whether it's down as a memory or not. So when you save that, it might need a restart and new context to apply that. So if you were to make changes if you were fine tuning the responses from the chatbot, you might have to restart the chatbot completely to get those new changes added. But there's another way of doing that, and I'll show you what it is now. Okay, so simpler explanation of an LLM. One paragraph. Yeah. So although everybody refers to these, this is, after all, there we go. It's AI with Robert. It's more useful to refer to these either as chatbots or LLMs. And that separates us from the idea of the intelligence because they're not intelligent. It's as simple as that. Right, so I'm going to stop sharing and then we'll come back to just sharing ChatGPT. Otherwise, it gets a little bit complicated. There we go. Okay, so how to personalize. So, all right, let's say for the rest of this conversation, I want you to use a minimal and explanatory use formatting and lists where useful. Okay, so it's got that minimal, clear, and explanatory. I say, so I now want an example by repeating this conversation. The new style. There you go. That's better, isn't it? So what is a large language model? It's a type of artificial intelligence that works with language. It's learned patterns from huge amounts of data. When you ask it something, it predicts the next words. It doesn't think or understand, must be listening to me. It recognizes and uses patterns in language to produce natural sounding responses. That is a lot better than a large language model is a type of artificial intelligence and can read and write, da, 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 da. Okay, so let's replace that. So now what you do is this. You have that information. You know that right now, this bot, if you say to it to use a minimal and explanatory style, use formatting and lists where useful for getting information across, that's a useful prompt with this model at this time. Right, I'll tell you about how to solve the PDF problem. Right, let's just move back to model. There we go. So you now have you have a way of fine-tuning its responses within a conversation. So now you mentioned that it doesn't generate PDFs very well. So what you do is when you want an output from a large language model, really you want to get it as Markdown and then convert it into a PDF afterwards. So please output as Markdown. What Markdown is a simple text language that uses symbols for formatting. So if we look at the output there, it says what is a large language model, and it's got 3 hashes in front of it. That means it's a third level header. So let me just, and I'll ask it to as a PDF. Oh, actually, I think I might get it to generate it as an image. That way you'll be able to see it in the output. Sometimes images take a while. It depends how heavily they are being used. I think I'll give it sort of 20 or 30 seconds. It's churning away. Kind of halfway there. Sometimes it stops halfway. There we go. Right. So if you look at this Markdown, you'll see that there was a hash that's telling the system that it's a header. The dashes, the hyphens, sometimes that gets output as a dot. Sometimes it gets output as it's basically a bullet list. The 2 stars before and after a word makes it bold. And as you can see, it's actually missed a bit here. So the original text was an LLM is a type of artificial intelligence that works with language. And instead, it's just put a type of artificial intelligence. So this is a very common thing. When you ask it to output something, it will actually change the output. So you have to sometimes be very specific. So let's say now with this exact markdown without any changes, you missed out an LLM. Whoops, extra L on the first bullet point. There we go. So you have to do your own QA. Now, when you get the markdown, you can copy the markdown, put it in an application that will then generate the PDF, and it will do it faithfully. Because of the way that the bot creates the PDF, it uses Python in the background. So it writes a little bit of code and it takes that little bit of code and then generates the PDF. And the code is quite a simple library. So its formatting and output is not great as an image with no changes. Let's see how it gets on. I think it's probably only 50-50, to be honest, whether we get the exact output from it. And the application that I use personally, so what I would do is I'd take the markdown like this. Here it is, markdown, copy, and I'd type it into an application called Bear, B-E-A-R. And I'd create a new file, new note, and then I'll just paste that in. However, I think to generate that as a piece of PDF, I think we need to probably have the paid version of Bear. However, there might be other applications which will convert Markdown to PDF for free. So if that happens to you and it's frustrating because it's overlapping some copy that you need, then you can. So the hashes are telling it it's a heading. So one hash is main heading, 2 hashes is heading number 2, and 3 hashes is heading 3. If you use Word, Microsoft Word, for example, you generate a document and then you go and have a look at the formatting. You've got header 1, header 2, header 3, and each one's a different style. There we go. You can see it's done. An LLM is a type of artificial intelligence, but what it hasn't done is it hasn't added the bold, because the 2 stars in front, the 2 stars behind are bold. Okay, so let's see where we've got with our notes. We've learned what tokens are, that essentially they're like words, and that this is how chatbots like ChatGPT charge you. We've learned that there's a thing called a context, which is like memory, and currently you can get 128,000 words in that context. Both in terms of charging, you get charged for tokens in and tokens out. And when you pay for a subscription or you have a free account, you've got a limited number of tokens. And so you will use up all of the access to your account. It's admitted what it is and what it does, which is that it doesn't think or understand, but it recognizes language. And we've also learned that we can prompt the chatbot to respond in a particular sort of way. We've learned that we can refine that, and we can do that within a conversation until we get the prompt that we want. And so the prompt that we got was use a minimal and explanatory style, use formatting and lists where useful for getting information across. And we know that right now with this model, and when we're talking about a model, what we mean is a version of an LLM, or a version of actually any AI, any bot. It's got a name and it's got a number, and they keep incrementing the numbers. So it's gone from ChatGPT version 1 up, and sometimes it's a full version, so from 4 to 5, or it might be 4 to 4.5 and then up to 5 later. And with this model at this time, that's a useful prompt. And Ruth says, does the markdown work with all work as on all chatbots? And the answer is yes. Very simply put, information into a chatbot, if you can, give it markdown, because it will make mistakes reading PDFs in the same way that it makes mistakes generating them. So if you can give it markdown, that's a more exact format. And so if you're transferring something from one chatbot to another, do it as markdown. There are various ways of generating markdown from all sorts of things nowadays. I mean, if you go onto the internet, if I find something for this, I will add some links to the article that this will generate, and that will give us give you some options for using markdown. But you can put in most sorts of files. You can put in Word files, you can put in, we'll stop sharing now, you can put in PDFs. Just be aware that some of these file formats are quite flaky, whereas markdown is very exact. So ideally, markdown in, markdown out. Get markdown out and convert it is the best case. Getting information in, you either type it like that or dictate. And ChatGPT's dictation system is the best there is. So I think earlier on you said, what are those little buttons? So if we look at the bottom here, you've got the cross on the left-hand side is for uploading files. You can also take a screenshot. Let me just go back to sharing it. Sorry. Share the window, ChatGPT. Here we go. There you go. So the little cross on the left hand side is for uploading files. So just try, if you're not sure about whether a file type can be uploaded, try it. You can also upload photos and it will read the language using a thing called optical character recognition. It will read the language in a photo and it's pretty good. It will get like 95% of it. Or you can take a screenshot and give it a screenshot. It also recognizes images. So you can get an image and you can put that in and you can say, what is that? The little round universe there is search the web. If you're dissatisfied with the response it's given you and you know that it's flaky, really to know, you've got to know what you're talking about to ask it questions, really. Otherwise, you're just going to get a load of junky and misinformation. It's no smarter than Google in that respect. But it's a hell of a lot quicker. And if you want to double check, then you click the little globe button and it's then searching for the internet. And the button to the right, this is for applications that you want to work with. So let's say you want to work with here the applications that it's identified that it can work with. Because I do some coding, there's some coding applications there. Text edit, you'll find if you've got a Mac or a little notepad if it's Windows. And it'll also work with notes. So you can say to it, right, create me a new note. And it should be able to do that. I haven't tested that with ChatGPT. Like I said, I don't use it a great deal. And you can also extract from a note. So these are getting better and better at working with the desktop, but we do have to be careful. Okay, so yeah, and you can to dictate. I'm not sure if it's going to work particularly well. So we've got three options here. Option number one is this is dictation. What happens here is that it will take an audio file. You can see the audio file being generated there. And then it will send that audio file back up to OpenAI. And it'll be transcribed by an application called Whisper. And then you'll get it back. And this is a pretty good way of getting dictation done. Until I had dictation applications on my computers, and because Apple's dictation was so bad, if I wanted to just do a little bit of dictation, then I would click on the ChatGPT screen like this, and it would do the dictation for me, and I'd get a transcript, and then I'd copy it and put it into another application. It looks like Apple's finally got their right. To dictate, there's a little microphone button on the right hand side, and then there's right at the very far right hand side is a button for if you would like to chat to it. So it's got a chat mode. So the little round button there is recording. The microphone button is for dictation, and you can send a message with the green button, but sometimes you've got the option to actually have a conversation. Oh yeah, I see. My head has appeared in the way. Sorry about that. Because it's only the one application, you can see it, can't see it. But yeah, I will hopefully produce a transcript from this, and that'll have that information in it as well. and then I'll push all of this into an article and put that on the AI with Robert.live website. Okay, so thanks for sticking with it. And I noticed there's 7 of us and there was only 5 when we first started. And I've got a couple of thumbs ups. So, you know, all the positive engagement that I can get for this, the better. Because I want to make something of this. I want to be able to get this information across to people and enable them and empower them to do things like writing their own books, for example. And writing articles and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Good to have you with us. And take care, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of the day. I'll put Copilot on the list. I could put Copilot on the list. Thanks, Cal and Bill and everybody. Take care. Bye.